Welcome to Psychic Evolution with evidential psychic medium Jamie Clark and spiritual coach and healer Maggie Clark.
And welcome back to another episode of Psychic Evolution. I'm Jamie Clark.
And I'm Maggie Clark, and this is the podcast where you discover the psychic potential within to empower yourself and manifest your psychic and mediumship gifts.
And these abilities are so natural, they're supernatural. And today we want to get into a little bit of Mindsight Telepathy, the ability to pick up information, thoughts, and energy just by opening up your mind, body, and soul.
This episode was prompted by many of our listeners asking more about telepathy. This is one of the questions we get often is, how can I do telepathy? How can I set parameters around what I do hear telepathically or see? And so this whole episode, we really wanted to dig into telepathy and really start also giving you some more exercises to do to help really work with the telepathic abilities. Because at the end of this episode, we're going to walk you through a couple of really cool exercises so that you can start practicing this in your life.
You know, there's so many great questions, but one of them is, how can you turn off the abilities if you don't want to use them?
And this question was stemmed from Jill, who's one of our avid Psychic Evolution podcast fans. So a shout out to you. Thank you so much for being a cool listener and having amazing questions. We really love your questions. But one of the questions was, she's been hearing thoughts like clairaudiently. And is there a way that she can turn the ability on or off or turn the volume up or down?
And I had the same circumstance where I want to pick up information for me when I want to, but I also don't want to get so saturated by other people's energies that I don't have a clue of what's going on. I always say, you never turn your abilities off. You just turn the volume down to that experience, circumstance, or clair. Now, for myself, in being able to deal with people and not wear their energy, I am, as those who know me know, I'm always on autopilot with most of my dynamics. And for myself, my energy, intent, and knowingness, not belief and hope, but knowingness, is that my entire energy field is a filtration system. If I'm open and I have it on autopilot, if I'm open and ready to start receiving, bip, it's already on. If I'm done or I'm not working, it automatically knows when to turn the volume down. But again, the good thing is that communication is always going on. And you may not want to always shut it off, if you were able to do that, because there could be some life-changing circumstances that could come right to you. And if you're not wanting to get them, of course, fine. But I've seen that sometimes those can be life-changing pieces of information that I don't want to just go, oh, I didn't hear nothing. I always have that sensitized energy that I wanted to be comfortable and to be able to function in day-to-day living. Because not only do I pick up the energy of individual people, but Mag and I went to a football game a while ago, and whoa, holy moly, there was so much energy with that crowd. And it was beautiful because it became more of a unified consciousness, meaning everyone was on for a good play. Everyone was clapping and having fun. It became patterns of energy that I could feel, but I wasn't saturated. I sensitized my energy field enough, as those who know me, I'm the boy in a plastic bubble, so to speak. And when I read for people or receive any information, it's always a filtration system where I'm always safe, but anything that I need to pick up on, I pick up on and then release it. Just like as the people, if you're coming to me for a reading, I love you, I'll breathe that energy in, I'll read it, and there you go, take it with you, because I ain't wearing the energy. And it becomes the intent, the knowingness of your parameters, that the more comfortable and solid and consistent you are with what you do and how you do it, the more open and receptive you'll be to information in many different circumstances.
And the first step always is to know your thoughts versus someone else's thoughts when you're dealing with telepathy. And this is a process of getting to know yourself, really understanding how your mind works. Like, was that my thought or was it someone else's? And that's just a process of getting to know yourself. I do recommend journaling to really get into fine tuning how you actually think, because once it's written on a piece of paper, I feel like when it's outside of you, you can really look at it in a different way. The other thing is, when we're really wanting to turn the volume down on telepathy, like we're hearing someone else's thoughts, it's distracting us from our everyday life. We're at work or we're at in the middle of an interview or whatever we're doing, and we're picking up on these thoughts. It's really important to maybe practice not during those times all the time, but during your quiet time in your meditation room, in your spiritual room. Check it out. Go into your spiritual room, and we have so many podcast episodes that we mention the spiritual room, so go back and listen to those if you haven't already. We also have an episode, season 2, episode 4, called Awakening Your Telepathic Senses. But as you're in your spiritual room, we want you to start working with that telepathic clairaudient ability. Most of the time with telepathy, it can be clairaudient, although sometimes it can be a barrage of pictures and images and smells and other things as well. So wherever you're feeling like you want the volume to be down, and for just an example, we're going to use clairaudient abilities. We want you to go into your spiritual room and start playing with it. Like say, okay, I'm now going to open to feeling a telepathic energy and see how loud that is. See how clear it comes in. And then see if you can turn it down. Now, if nothing's coming in, I want you to really ask your guides. If you're working with your master guide, ask your master guide. Or if you're not working with your master guide, ask your higher self and say, hey, I want to telepathically hear something, right? Or feel something, however it is that you're receiving this information. And then I want to work with hearing the same thing over and over and over again as I adjust the volume levels and see how that works. Now, if you're not getting anything, if you're not sensing anything, this is going to be a harder exercise. And this is a little bit more of an advanced exercise, but you guys are ready for it. You are so ready to actually explore what it is that we can do with our psychic abilities. Above and beyond everything else, it would be fun just to explore this. Now, that is just one exercise, and we're going to have more at the end of the show that we've got planned for you too. But really, the first thing is knowing your thoughts versus someone else's, and then really working to train what it is that you can work with your volume levels as you're in your spiritual room. And again, this is going to be on your console that you've created to work with all of your spiritual dials and your psychic senses and your metaphysical senses.
In addition, for me and getting to know our own thought patterns, meditation is a very big key to success. And for myself, in the beginning, many years ago, when I started doing meditation, my mental chatter, ding, 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 gotta pay bills, gotta do this, gotta do all that, would not stop. And a lot of people will try to squelch that. They'll try to stop that, and it only just keeps going. I learned fairly quickly that during the meditation, I become mindless, not mindful. But in addition, for the meditation aspect, also give yourself permission, like sit down, you can watch a tree sway or clouds go by if you want to. All it is learning to just relax the mind. Now, the ability to let that mind chatter race through and just keep going without stopping it. Don't try to limit it, nothing. That is your mind chatter, your day-to-day living, so that you begin to know when you're thinking your own thoughts and when you're receiving information from somebody else's thought pattern. That becomes a huge dynamic of clarity, safety, and harmony. Because if you don't have some of these rules and regs in place and you just kind of open up willy-nilly, and that can be okay sometimes. But for me, I want to understand as much as I can with the parameters of all of the spiritual stuff so that I do the best I can to function within it and not get saturated from it.
And we want to think about telepathy as learning how to focus our mind in two places at once. Because we're focused on who we are and what we're doing in this moment, but we're also receiving an impression or information or even a message from someone telepathically. You know, when you're listening to music and you're jamming out to your favorite tune, and then Jamie comes in the room or someone comes in your room and says, "Hey, how's it going? How was your day?" And all of a sudden you switch, right? You mentally turn down the volume. Well, hopefully you did and didn't ignore Jamie, but you mentally turn down the volume of the music in your mind so that you can shift your focus to someone talking to you. The same thing happens with telepathic communication, where we have to learn how to focus on two things at once, whatever it is that we're doing, our own mind, and then be willing to receive and open to another's thoughts. And then we can work with turning up and down the volumes in either place. If we want to turn down our own thoughts, we can. If we want to turn up other people's thoughts, we can. We can start working that way. So, training that is learning how to really focus the mind. We do have another episode, The Law of Mentalism, that gives you some tips and tricks on focusing the mind. But it's one of those things that when you know how you think and how your brain works, I have learned how to compartmentalize my brain in a certain aspect where I'm over here thinking, and then I'm also over here listening to my guides or listening to messages that come to me. I do this often when I'm doing tarot readings. I'll be throwing down cards and my mind will go into what it knows the cards of the meanings are. But then my other mind, right, my psychic telepathic mind or my mindsight will go into what it is I'm receiving in addition to what it is that I know. So I'm working logically, I'm giving my logical mind some place to focus, but then I'm also going, whoa, okay, there, I'm receiving an image or there's a word dropping into my mind or something else. The same thing will happen telepathically. And you can practice telepathy even if you're a tarot reader, right? You can throw down cards and be like, I know what this card, I know the Three of Swords is about sorrow. But then at the same time as I'm thinking that, I'm opening up another area of my brain or my consciousness to receive another message around that card at the very exact same time. I'm not waiting, right? Because I'm going to go on to the next card, especially if I'm doing a reading for someone. If it's myself, I can sit and wait all day. And that's what we're going to encourage you to do, is to be patient with yourself as you're learning how to create another area of your brain or your mindset to function in a different way. And once you can hear two things at once, your logical mind thinking your own Maggie thoughts or whoever you are thoughts, and then the mindsight is the telepathic information, whether it's coming from your guides or your intuition or your senses, or whether it's coming from outside. I actually have little, I don't call them boxes, but they show up in different areas around my head, but just for telepathic information. And it'll just pop in. I ask it to come in a certain area in my energy field so that I know it's telepathic. And that's also another activity that you can try, is like, okay, I'm going to go hang out with my friend today. Let's see if I can receive a telepathic thing, but I want it to come right here. I want it to be in this area of my body or in this area of my mindset or in this area of my spiritual room. And then I want to be able to receive that as I'm going on having a conversation with her and just doing whatever it is that I'm doing.
Now, a comment that I get every so often is not everyone feels comfortable having a psychic medium standing before them. They can feel a little bit like, hey, wait a minute. And they'll say, can you stop reading my energy? And I'm like, well, unless you can stop thinking, no. So it becomes the dynamic that it is not judgment about, it is understanding the best that I can where that person is at so that I can communicate and talk with them, not just to them. And the ability to have those mental thoughts in other people's energy fields. I'm able to pick that up for that individualized person. Now, not only can I pick up mental thought patterns of the person I'm reading for, but sometimes they'll ask me, what about my boss or my spouse or a friend or whoever it is? And I'll go through that person's energy field because whoever they're asking about isn't physically sitting there, but energy vibe-wise, metaphysically, I'll go through their energy. And as I always say, just my awareness. Anybody that you interact with, you are wearing a little vibrational pattern of that person's energy field in your energy. Not only that, there are times in a conversation where they start going off track in some way, and I'll be able to hear and feel their thoughts to go, oh, I feel like they're meaning this. And I'll be able to bring that conversation back around here, not through manipulation, but orchestration and the ability to go, okay, so, possibly this connection. And as I always say, for me, as I read for people, those who know me, is I read this information in thin air or the ethers as we perceive it. And any thought you have, any experience that is had is held within the ethers. And anyone who's sensitive enough can pick up those vibrations and let it speak to you. Now, that kind of ties into the things that are in the ethers is like sometimes people will go to a location and in their mind sight or physically start seeing it, it's like they're seeing a scene and it's from, many years ago. And they'll say, oh, I was seeing all this, but they weren't even aware of me. What if you were tapping in to the ether experience whenever that time frame was with whatever circumstance that was, and it's playing out now? That is how that connection can work. The more that you realize that everything is interconnected, there truly is no separation of anything. As crazy as it is, it's all interconnected. And the ability to understand where that person is at is a very comfortable aspect because a lot of times people make the comment to go, I feel like you get me. I feel like you understand me. I'm like, well, I'm doing the best I can because, yeah, we're on the same channel. That's the point. And when they can become more comfortable in this case and open up because they know I'm not judging, that is perfect. In addition, for most of my life, people would ask, what do you do professionally? And my response was, I'm a psychic medium. Yeah. So now when they ask me, well, what do you do professionally? I'll respond with, I'm a consultant. I'm not misleading. I'm genuine. I am a consultant, but I wait until they get to know me for who I am and then just realize I'm just like everyone else. I'm just using my abilities. That allows them to kind of put that protective energy down that they're afraid of people sauntering in to go, it's been here the whole time. But now you see, I'm comfortable, you're comfortable, everything is relaxed, and now we're having a great conversation.
The first time I saw you multitask with your telepathic abilities was in one of your gallery readings. And you were in the process of giving someone information from a loved one on the other side, and the name was someone I know, and I thought of this person, and you just whipped your head around and you said, "Not that one," and then, like, went right back to your reading, and it was so funny because no one really knew why you were telling me that except for myself because I'm the one my thoughts were my own, I didn't say it out loud. I was just thinking of this person because it had the same name as someone on the other side, and you're like, "Nope, not that one." And then you just went right back into what you're doing. It was one of those things where you were so open and receptive, not only to the other side doing mediumship, but to every thought that was in the room. And obviously, I was thinking very loudly, and we're connected, so that helps. And you were just like, whoa. Sometimes I forget how psychic you are. Like, I was like, what the heck? And sometimes it just takes you off guard that someone can hear the exact name that you're thinking. And it's one of those times where you know that we're connected telepathically when you're hearing the same thoughts or saying the same words at the same time or on the same channel, have the same song stuck in your head, whatever that looks like. But I think that you have the ability to turn off the thoughts of some people just so you can connect to the other side. Do you ever feel like the need to do that when you're doing gallery readings with a whole group? Do you turn off your telepathic psychic awareness to hear the other side? Or how do you manage both ways of receiving information simultaneously?
Yeah, I learned again, I never turn it off, but I can shift my focus. And if I'm starting to pick up a mass consciousness of the group or whoever it is, I'll just refine it and go, Pip, let's just talk with this person here and their loved ones that are coming through. Now, I'm still picking up information, but I'm not distracted by everyone else's thoughts. I've got my own intent that I am directly connecting with that person, whoever's physically sitting in front of me, and their soul print of consciousness and who their loved ones are communicated with. Because again, in that capacity, not only is it psychic reading, but mediumship reading, if you don't have an idea of what's your stuff, or what's others, you'll be shown a lot of things that can be like, what the heck? And I always want to give myself as much comfort and relaxed energy while I'm opening up to these experiences.
So is that a volume shift or
That's a focus shift.
see, and that's what I think is so important about mindsight is that when we learn how to focus, wow, the whole world can open up or close up just on what it is that we're focusing on. And it's really, really important. So I know focus isn't everyone's strong point. I know some people jump from one thing to another, to another, to another. And even my mentor said, Maggie, you're like a fart in a skillet going from one thing to another. And so I really had to learn how to focus. It was something that I really, and to sit still, but I really had to learn how to focus on more than one thing at the same time. And I learned that first and foremost through my ability to focus my energy, and because that was part of my training was focusing my energy for certain things while I was doing other things. So I can walk in a room, focus my energy one place, and then be doing something completely different. And that has, in addition, has helped me with the telepathic understandings and what I'm perceiving and what I'm not. And more often now, I have more courage to say, hey, friend, we just pulled up to your house and I'm seeing a dog in your backyard. Are you thinking about getting another dog? And sure enough, oh my gosh, yes, I was. And I was like, okay. And was I hearing her thoughts? Was I absolutely, we were connected. There was some kind of that in our energy field. And she, lo and behold, had just been thinking about that. And again, like you said, those thoughts are held within the ethers. So sometimes you're hearing thoughts that she wasn't thinking about it at that very moment, but the day prior she had been. So that's learning also, where is this telepathy coming from? Is it now? Is it then? But time's an illusion? What does that mean?
But here's the thing, you bring up an interesting point for me. I believe that you were saying, well, when you go to see a person, in this case, you were seeing a dog in the backyard. Well, don't you kind of find that interesting that you're going to pick up energy in a other location in the backyard connected to the person's thoughts of what they had been thinking, because they were thinking, I believe you said, just recently we were thinking about getting another dog. And so now, more than likely, whoever that person was seeing how it'd feel and have them in the backyard and all that. And all Maggie did was tune in and go, "You've been thinking about another dog? Not a cat, not a raccoon, not a lion, a dog." And why? Because she saw a dog. It becomes very effective that energy, information is held within the ethers of connection.
And that brings up another question. What is the difference between a psychic read and telepathy? Is there a difference? Is it the same? How does that work?
Yes, it is. It's receiving information. Yep. And the clair that you're using, whether you're seeing it, hearing it, feeling it, they're all the clairs.
And that's something I think is really important because a lot of times we think of telepathy being in the very much in the now moment, like what's happening right now. And that could certainly happen. You can walk into a room and hear all kinds of crazy thoughts going on, and you're like, woo. And I think that that is something that does overwhelm people. They go into a crowd or in a workplace or where there's a bunch of people, and then all of a sudden it's a barrage of information and energy. It's those times that we want to learn how to change our focus, turn the volume down on that so that we can really be comfortable in our own environment. And sometimes, when we're switching gears, switching focus, like turning volumes up and down, learning how to do that is really, really important. But more importantly, I think the other side of that coin and the other question we get just as many questions of how do you turn the volume up and down as to how do I do it? How do I build that muscle? And it literally is a mind sight muscle, just like the psychic, just like the mediumship. It's a channel that you open up to. And it functions exactly the same way as a psychic read or a mediumship read. You're just receiving information.
And as we were just talking about, when Mag was going up and she saw that dog in the backyard and then asked that, again, to me, your thoughts are held within the ethers, which is how I read for people psychically and mediumship. But in addition, there have been times, and one of the most recent was a number of years ago, where I was in the kitchen and I had opened the pantry door there to get some bottled waters and put them in the refrigerator. And I was out. So I'm like, all right, I'll go and get them and, I'll do my thing. So as I was going around, I got a little distracted and I forgot what the frig was I going to get. And so I thought to myself, you know what? Let me see if there's any more validity to that. So I wanted to see if my thought of whatever it was that I was supposed to get was still in the ethers, or did it just dissipate? So as I walked back down the hall and I came around the corner there and I could see the door, the pantry door, floating in midair is a case of water. I'm like, got it. Thank you. That's freaking huge. But now we're seeing that thoughts can literally be projected into other areas. This person more than likely wasn't standing in the backyard. She saw the dog as a potential. Now, here's an interesting thing. Do you know, did they get a dog? And do you know if that dog was similar to the one that you saw in your mind sight?
Well, the dog I saw in my mind sight was a kind of dog that this person had had previously. And so I wasn't sure if I was picking up on mediumship levels on a dog that had already been there or one that was coming. So when I vibed it, I was like, no, this feels like a future energy. Like it hasn't already occurred yet in this reality. And so that's why I said, are you thinking about getting a dog versus like, hey, I just saw your dog in the backyard, he's probably saying hi. And it could have been both. Absolutely. It could have been both. But what I vibed was, no, this is like some where her thought and her thought attention was. So it was very interesting. And mediumship and psychic have different vibrations, even though we use the same skills to do mediumship and to practice our psychic and to practice our telepathy. We have different channels that we tune into to know where that is. And that's something you set up in your spiritual room with your team. Like, hey, psychic information I'd like to receive here. Mediumship from the other side, let's receive it over there. And telepathy, let's receive it here. And for me, I vibe it really quickly. It doesn't take more than a nanosecond to know which area it's coming from.
Not only that, remember as I was saying, my thought was of the bottled waters and it was standing in the, so to speak, standing or floating in midair. Now, that was a thought that because I was in that location and I was focused on that location, but I did or didn't find as the trigger, that do you realize what that says? If thought can be projected to a location, you can project it to any location, whether it's right in front of you, a gazillion trillion light years away on another world. What? It is unconditional. And now we can start to see how we can reach out to different locations and pick up information from whatever the person's asking about or that we're tuning into. Again, just for me, you don't have to physically be in that location. It is all interconnected. So if you sensitize yourself, you can begin to read the energy more expandedly and more focused.
So stay tuned, guys. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back with that exercise to do to strengthen your telepathic abilities with your Mindsight Telepathy.
Hey guys, it's Jamie and Maggie Clark with Psychic Evolution. We want to share an upcoming Starseed Awakening Retreat.
We're teaming up with Infinite Healing from the Stars. That's Vivian Chavette, an Octurian hybrid, and Peter Benson with Tensor Energy Tools. And we're joining them for a weekend retreat in Phoenix, Arizona, July 22nd through 24th of 2022. And we're here to assist you in discovering your purpose as a starseed and how to align and activate your starseed DNA. Let the ascension begin with this multidimensional, intergalactic, and interactive journey. Included will be Arcturian holographic healing, ancestral starseed mediumship, planetary grid realignment, and exercises to embody your starseed DNA. You are cosmic celestial energy. Visit jamieclark.net to register and for more information. We look forward to gathering with like-minded starseeds.
Free your inner space astronaut and immerse yourself in your starseed heritage.
And for our podcast listeners, we do have a coupon code to take $75 off your registration at checkout. Enter the coupon code INTERGALACTIC and pay attention at checkout to see what your total is, because the language of the universe is always speaking to you. And welcome back, guys. Now we have a really fun exercise. So Jamie and I, when we were planning this podcast episode, We looked at all the listeners' questions. We saw how similar most of them were about volume up or down. Again, this is so much practice. Remember, we don't get good at a layup until we practice it over and over and over again. And if you're like me, trying to make a free throw at 10 years old, 10 feet away, I didn't have the strength to do it. I had to keep practicing, keep practicing, keep practicing. Eventually, I got there. So, our psychic abilities, our telepathic abilities, our mediumship abilities take practice. They take an opening and a receptive approach. So, don't give up on yourself just if it doesn't happen right away. Okay. This is a practice thing. Okay. So, telepathically, one, you can always use the psychic evolution training cards or any cards, or even a playing card deck to practice and go back and listen to Awakening Your Telepathic Senses, and you can figure out how to send an image. So grab a friend or a family member that is into this kind of thing, right? And what we want you to do is sitting across, say, okay, you're both in agreement that you're going to share telepathically. Okay, so that's important to ask permission when you're working with someone in training. Okay, just don't throw things at them unless you have carte blanche. Like I can throw things at Jamie all day long, whether he receives them or not. Doesn't make any difference, but we have that open connection. So if you have that, cool. If not, sit down, agree to this, verbally say, yes, I agree to receive and send information telepathically. We want to be very respectful of who we're working with, okay? Now, the sender is going to recall a memory and vibe with all the sensations from that memory. Choose a memory that is beautiful, high vibration, something that is just rich, that it can bring up a ton of emotion that doesn't make any difference. Actually, the more emotion, the more energy around it sometimes. But find a memory that really, really has stuck with you through time, that has really given you some rich energy. And then put yourself right into that memory. Smell the air. Feel whatever's in front of you. Okay? See everything that's in front of you. Listen to everything that's around you. And really take in all of those metaphysical senses through that memory and just vibe with it. Vibe so strongly that you feel like you're right there again. And after a moment of just really feeling that this is a rich experience, the receiver of this is going to write down everything that they see, everything that they hear, everything that they taste. Use all of your clairs, all your metaphysical senses, smell, skin vision, what they feel. Have them write down everything. If you need guidance, you can ask yourself questions. What did I feel? What do I taste? What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I know? And then have them write it down and then have them share the information with you, the sender, and then see what is accurate. See what images they got or how did it fit with the memory? Did something fit with the memory? Maybe they felt an emotion. Maybe they got a word. Maybe they got a name. Maybe they got a location. Who knows? But when we practice this, it's such a rich experience and it has already happened. So we are working with like something that is considered real time, even though time's an illusion. We'll keep going right back to that, but it's a real moment in time that had so much energy around it that there was something to feel. And when you start sending that to a person, consciously sending this, you don't have to focus so hard that you're just so focused on sending, you're so focused on sending. That's not going to help. What we wanna do is say, "All right, I'm gonna work with my guides, my parameters, and I'm just gonna vibe with it and send that through my consciousness."
To get even a little bit more refined, you can take each clair during that visual sending. And what I mean by that is you can tell the person that is the receiver that you're sending the information to, okay, I'm going to use the clairaudient, the ability to hear things. So I'm going to send you a bunch of noise or whatever the case is and see if you want to pick it up, see if you can. Because otherwise, using all of the senses is great, but it might be a little sporadic here and there. For me, I'm lazy. Let's keep it one thing. Do you see anything? Do you hear anything? Do you feel something? any of those clairs that will get them connected by just one focus of a clair, so that way they know what they're supposed to be receiving, and they're a little bit more in tune, a little bit more receptive, and a little bit more at ease in order to receive that information. And it's a little bit more at ease when they're familiar with you.
That's such a great point, Jamie, to bring up is that telepathic abilities, it can be overwhelming if you're receiving a whole memory. And if you want to focus in on just one aspect of or one clair, that works really, really well.
And the ability to read different circumstances in the past, so to speak. I've done a lot of work with law enforcement and a variety of other things. I was working with a cold case posse, and some of these cold cases were 30, 40 years ago that they never found anything, nothing. So I would start to vibe it in the beginning when they first started coming to me. They're not silly. They don't give you anything. There's always 7 detectives around for whatever reason. And detectives, all of them are trained to be skeptical. Well, for the first thing, they said, hey, here's some numbers. Here's a case number. What do you get? And so that's all they gave me was just numbers. That's it. Yet I started vibing that number as a potential what's the information in connection with that number. And I started picking up aspects of information that I was Joe Schmo. They didn't give me anything because it could have been any case in any way. But I was picking up very accurately, apparently, the circumstances, in this case, around some of the people that were found. And as I started, just flipping that out, they go, here's what I'm picking up. They're like, and what else do you get? And yeah. And so from the first time, when I was in there and I met the detectives and I started doing that first reading, and they're like, wow, yeah, we do understand that. And then all the other detectives would be like, and so what about me? What do you think about that? What do you think about this? And it became really cool because I always say, please always be skeptical, question everything, just be open. And so for these detectives that are very well trained and all that good stuff, they were very into this. Like, that is not good guesswork. There's something to that stuff because that's an old case. Right. It could have been anything, yet information vibing with the numbers of the case, because all they gave me was the numbers. I picked up, apparently, a lot of information and circumstances that was connected specifically to this case, not a bunch of other cases, this one. So now we can start to target vibrations of information. And then the ability to give them some tools and techniques, the detectives, so that they could start reading and vibing cases. They could start reading people's energies to see who was being targeted. And again, all of these thoughts and energies always playing, but I can focus in on a specific dynamic, kind of like as I was sharing when somebody comes before me and then they ask, what about my boss or my spouse or whatever the case is? I'm going through that person's energy field, their thought field, but I'm able to only pick up the information about the person they're asking for. And usually very accurate with personalities and dynamics and perspectives and all that. And so when they can see to go, they're not even sitting here yet. I asked you a question and there's more than one John on the planet. I'm like, yeah, isn't it either really good guesswork or I don't know, something to it. And so when they can do that and get that solid validation, it's a little bit more, okay, I don't necessarily understand it, but there's some validity to this. So what else do you pick up? What else you getting?
Well, I definitely feel like there's so many similarities between telepathy and a psychic read, because it's just
It's the same
reading.
thing.
It's the same thing, right? And I like that idea of it because it makes it really easy to work with. If you can work with your psychic abilities, you should be able to work with your telepathic abilities because it's the same thing. I love that. There's another exercise that we have, which is building a mindsight picture together. So Jamie and his mom used to do this exercise where they would, first of all, they'd pick a flower, like a rose, and they'd picture a rose, and they'd send it to each other until they received that information. Is that correct?
Yep. You got it.
Okay. And then the other person would build out that. So the rose is on or right next to a tree, and then they'd send the tree. And then the tree is right next to someone's house, and then they'd send a house. So they were building a mindsight picture of a scene of what it looked like. One person would start with one thing, the other person would start with another, and they would build a scene. Kind of like if you were writing a book together and you wanted to create a scene and like, okay, the opening scene has to be so amazing. Let's start with focusing in on a rose. And then there's a white picket fence next to it. And then there's grass, like green grass lawn, and it leads into a driveway and it goes into a house, and all of these magical people are in the house, right? So building out a whole picture just by sending and receiving information. So it's kind of fun to do because you ever play that game as a kid where you'd say a word or a sentence and someone had to like continue the story and say the next sentence and then it would go to the next person. And so you'd create this really random weird story by just people saying whatever that came into their head. It's the same thing, except for you're doing this telepathically and being able to like really receive that information. How did it feel when you were able to get that kind of clarity with someone telepathically?
It was great because it gave me more comfort to trust what I was receiving and how I was receiving it. Not only that, but I was able to use some of those visuals that my mom and I were working with when I was doing mediumship or psychic reads. Because once in a while, I'd be shown the house that we were visualizing, and then in this case, the roses. And then they would put, in this case, for that particular, a headstone. I'm like, oh, so these roses have been planted in honor of this loved one. And it is by the tree, by the white picket fence. And people can be very amazed to go, you've never seen that location ever before. I'm like, yeah, but I'm actually seeing it. And being able to use that mediumship or psychic because it was a scene. It was just a created scene that I have worked with. And so whether it was psychic or the other side, loved ones, they would be able to go, oh, he's created a scene. And that's very similar to what I grew up with. So have him talk about his scene. And then it would become a validation to go, I'm being shown the very energy of what we were working with. But because it was somebody else showing me that, one, I knew when I was thinking my own thoughts and connected with my information, and when somebody was sending or giving me that information.
So, mediumship wise, the other side would say, hey, Jamie, think about creating the scene, this mindsight picture that you and your mom used to do. And so you would go into that, but then they'd start changing it to show you what was real for the sitter that you were doing a reading for.
Yep, exactly. The variations, if there were variations. Otherwise, once in a while, they'd be like, that's exactly my place. I'm like, oh, great, because I haven't been there. I don't know, yet I know. And so, yeah, it becomes very effective because I could also be shown any of those pieces of information and they could give me a different vibe of information about it. Oh, okay, so here's that headstone by the roses, which is an honoring. And apparently they have that tree. And what they're vibing with is somebody was known for planting trees. And they'll be like, that's interesting because we did plant a tree whenever it was. I'm like, oh, okay. So I've been shown that information, but I knew the variants to go talk about this particular aspect of that information, and it was correct.
So, whether you are receiving information from the other side to build that picture, doing mediumship, or you're just vibing what they're thinking in their thoughts, and that's telepathic. Either way, however you want to work with this, it's all about fine tuning your mind sight so that you can receive the information, feel the information, or however it is that you process that reception of thoughts or pictures or whatever might be emitted.
And picking up those vibes. Again, in that energy of locations, not only is it locations, but it's people. So again, this is just a few of the tools and techniques that we do, but we want to give you everything that we do so that if you're interested, one, put it to the test. Two, you get some kind of an outcome. Now there's something to it.
So focus your mind, learn how to turn up and down that volume. That's really important if you're being overwhelmed with telepathic communication. And then if you're building it out, find a partner to work with, find someone that you really trust, and just set a time and a day and do it often. If you can do this once a week, just say, hey, Monday nights at 7, let's meet up for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or however long you want to work with your telepathic senses. And let's just see where we can go, because you will learn each other's telepathic vibes when you do it more often, and you can get on the same page. And it will not only increase your ability to work with your psychic gifts, your mediumship gifts, your animal communication, it will help everything across the board. So have fun with your psychic evolution, guys. Thank you so much for taking this journey with us together, because we are here to help and support your psychic evolution. Hello, my beautiful goddesses. It's Maggie from the podcast Psychic Evolution, and I want to invite you to a fall equinox 5-day, 4-night, all-inclusive women's retreat in 2022, where you explore your feminine essence through the potent medicine of the goddess, witch, and womb, the multifaceted essence of your wild woman. Are you ready to take the time for you? This is a true escape from reality where you will learn, grow, and nurture your soul, as well as rest and reset. Gather with like-minded sisters to explore the essence of feminine magic, what it means to be embodied, how to love yourself on a deeper level than you ever have before, through ancient ceremonial magic and the spirit of plants. This journey into the unknown will create space for the breakthroughs you've always hoped for. Visit mysticharmonyrose.com to register and for more information. And I am honored to join you in Sedona at this retreat. I look forward to seeing you there. If you have been enjoying this podcast, we please ask that you go to Apple Podcasts and go ahead and rate this podcast. Leave us an awesome review. We really appreciate your reviews. They mean a lot to us, and thank you so much. If you are listening to this on something other than Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review on our website. We also have a little microphone on the bottom right-hand corner of our website. If you want to ask a question and leave us a question, it will be a voicemail recorded. We'll play back your voice on this podcast and answer your questions, if we can get to them all. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We love you guys.
Love and light, and we'll see you in our psychic evolution.